The construction of the sexual self is a complex, multidimensional process arising from the dynamic interplay of biological predispositions, psychological development, and socio-cultural influences. To view it through a solely biological lens is to overlook the profound complexity of human sexuality, which is simultaneously an embodied, cognitive, emotional, and relational phenomenon. Biologically, sexual differentiation begins at conception with the combination of X and Y chromosomes. The SRY gene on the Y chromosome typically triggers the development of testes, which produce androgens, like testosterone, leading to male internal and external genitalia. In the absence of the SRY gene, ovaries develop, and estrogen and progesterone dominate, leading to female genitalia. During puberty, this endocrine system reactivates, flooding the body with hormones that catalyze the development of secondary sexual characteristics, e.g., breast development, voice deepening, body hair growth. These processes have evolutionary underpinnings, enhancing reproductive fitness. However, this binary model is insufficient. Differences of sex development, DSD, formerly termed intersex conditions, illustrate the biological spectrum of sex. Conditions like congenital adrenal hyperplasia, CAH, and androgen insensitivity syndrome, AIS, demonstrate that chromosomal sex, XX/XY, gonadal sex, ovaries/testes, and phenotypic sex, genitalia, are not always aligned. The landmark Philippine Supreme Court case Republic of the Philippines versus Jennifer B. Kagandahan, GR number 166676, September 12, 2008, is a critical jurisprudential acknowledgement of this complexity. Kagandahan, with CAH, experienced virilization and identified as male. The court ruled that for intersex individuals, the individual's psychological and emotional orientation should be paramount in determining legal sex, privileging self-identification over strictly chromosomal or birth-assigned sex. This decision underscores a modern understanding: biological sex is a constellation of factors, and gender identity is a deeply personal psychological construct. This ruling also situates the Philippines within global debates on sex and gender, challenging the assumption that science and law always align neatly. Similar discussions appear in pop culture. For instance, the Netflix series Sex Education, which features intersex and transgender narratives, and highlights how biology, identity, and society intersect in deeply personal ways. Psychologically, the sexual self-concept is a core component of one's overall identity. It encompasses sexual self-esteem, how one values themselves as a sexual being, sexual self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to communicate sexual needs and manage sexual situations effectively, sexual schema, the cognitive generalizations about sexual aspects of the self that organize past experiences and guide future processing of relevant information. This concept evolves throughout life but is particularly formative during adolescence, when questions of identity, attraction, and belonging become central. It is shaped by a confluence of factors: parental attitudes, cultural and religious norms, peer influences, media representations, and early romantic or sexual experiences. Research consistently shows that a positive and integrated sexual self-concept is correlated with healthier relationships, more consistent contraceptive use, higher self-esteem, and greater overall psychological well-being. Conversely, distorted or suppressed sexual self-concepts, often the result of restrictive religious teachings, rigid gender norms, or internalized shame, can lead to sexual dysfunction, secrecy, or difficulty establishing intimate relationships. This is why modern psychology emphasizes sex positivity, not as permissiveness, but as a stance that recognizes sexuality as a natural, valuable, and integral part of being human. Sternberg's triangular theory of love, 1986-1988, is one of the most influential psychological frameworks for understanding the nature of love. It proposes that love is composed of three fundamental components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Intimacy refers to emotional closeness, connectedness, and the bond that fosters warmth, trust, and mutual support in a relationship. Passion, on the other hand, is the motivational component that fuels physical attraction, sexual desire, and infatuation, often the driving force during the early stages of romantic involvement. Commitment is the cognitive dimension, reflecting the conscious decision to maintain the relationship over time, encompassing both the short-term choice to love someone and the long-term determination to sustain that love through challenges. What makes Sternberg's model compelling is how these three components combine to form different types of love experiences. For instance, the presence of only intimacy results in liking, such as in friendships, while passion alone produces infatuation, and commitment alone leads to empty love. When intimacy and passion combine without commitment, the result is romantic love, often intense but fragile. The pairing of intimacy and commitment without passion creates companionate love, typical in long-term friendships or marriages that have lost physical spark but remain emotionally close. Passion plus commitment without intimacy leads to fatuous love, often seen in whirlwind romances or love at first sight situations that escalate quickly. Finally, when all three components, intimacy, passion, and commitment, are present and balanced, they produce consummate love, which Sternberg describes as the complete form of love many aspire to achieve. Importantly, Sternberg emphasizes that love is not static but dynamic. Relationships may shift from one type of love to another depending on life circumstances, maturity, and relational growth. For example, infatuation may develop into romantic love, or romantic love may transition into companionate love as passion fades but intimacy and commitment remain. Conversely, relationships can deteriorate if one or more components weaken, leading to dissatisfaction or dissolution. The theory also underscores the subjective and cultural nature of love, as societies differ in how they prioritize intimacy, passion, and commitment. In collectivist cultures, for example, commitment may be emphasized more strongly than passion. Whereas individualist cultures may valorize passion and emotional intimacy, Sternberg's triangular theory provides a rich, multidimensional lens for understanding love as more than just a feeling. It is a complex interplay of emotion, motivation, and decision-making shaped by personal development and cultural context. It not only offers individuals a framework for evaluating their own relationships but also provides psychologists, educators, and counselors a valuable tool in promoting healthier and more realistic expectations of love. Attachment theory. Bowlby, 1969, Ainsworth, 1978 explains how early caregiver bonds shape adult love styles. Secure attachment fosters balanced intimacy and autonomy, while anxious or avoidant attachments manifest in relationship instability. Pop culture depictions, such as Ross and Rachel in Friends, anxious preoccupied dynamics, or Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, avoidant turned secure, offer rich illustrations of how attachment plays out in romance. Lee's Typology of Love Styles, 1973, identifies 6 distinct ways people experience and express love. Eros reflects passionate, romantic love characterized by deep physical and emotional attraction. Ludus represents a playful, non-committal approach where love is seen as a game rather than a lifelong bond. Storge is rooted in friendship, where affection develops gradually through trust and companionship. Pragma emphasizes practicality and logic, with partners chosen based on compatibility and long-term goals. Mania embodies obsessive and possessive love, often marked by insecurity and dependency. Finally, agape signifies selfless, altruistic, and unconditional love that prioritizes the well-being of the partner above one's own needs. Together, these styles highlight that love is not a universal experience but is shaped by individual personalities, relational dynamics, and cultural expectations. Neurochemistry of love. Helen Fisher and colleagues identify 3 overlapping stages: lust, testosterone/estrogen, attraction, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and attachment, oxytocin, vasopressin. This neurobiological approach helps explain why heartbreak feels like withdrawal and why long-term bonds involve different chemicals than early infatuations. Together, these theories show that love is not merely a feeling but a psychosocial and biological system that integrates body, mind, and culture. The Fry's model: freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, specific, operationalizes consent, making it clear and actionable. Consent is not just a private agreement but also a moral and legal safeguard that upholds the dignity, autonomy, and safety of individuals. It is at the intersection of ethics, law, and everyday practice, shaping not only personal relationships but also broader cultural norms. In practice, this means, freely given, consent must be free from coercion, manipulation, or abuse of power. A yes obtained through pressure, intoxication, intimidation, or exploitation of authority is not valid consent. For example, if a supervisor pressures an employee, or if someone says yes while under the influence of alcohol, that consent is compromised. Reversible consent is dynamic, not permanent. Even if someone initially agrees, they retain the right to stop or withdraw at any point. This principle emphasizes respect for changing boundaries and feelings during an encounter. The phrase "no means no" remains relevant, but equally important is recognizing that yes can later turn into no. Informed, all parties must have accurate and relevant information before consenting. This includes disclosing facts such as the presence of sexually transmitted infections, STIs, contraceptive use, or intentions regarding the activity. In legal contexts, withholding crucial information may be considered fraud or misrepresentation. Undermining the legitimacy of consent. Enthusiastic consent should be active, deliberate, and expressed with genuine willingness. Silence, hesitation, or compliance out of fear does not equate to consent. Campaigns like "Only Yes Means Yes" and "Consent is Sexy" highlight this principle, shifting the cultural focus from merely avoiding a no to actively seeking an affirmative, eager yes. Specific agreement to one act does not imply agreement to others. Consent must be situation-specific and cannot be generalized or assumed. For instance, consenting to kissing does not automatically mean consenting to sexual intercourse. This specificity protects against assumptions that often lead to violations. Media campaigns such as "Only Yes Means Yes" reflect this cultural shift from passive to active consent. Universities, workplaces, and advocacy groups increasingly incorporate the Fry's model into orientation programs, sexual education curricula, and workplace policies. This growing visibility reinforces the idea that consent is not a one-time checklist but an ongoing dialogue. Importantly, laws and ethics converge here. A sexual encounter without consent is not just unethical, it is criminal. Rape laws, sexual assault statutes, and workplace harassment policies all embed the principle of consent at their core. Jurisdictions worldwide are moving toward an affirmative consent standard, where the absence of a clear yes is legally treated as non-consent. For example, Spain's 2022 "Only Yes Means Yes" law codifies the Fry's framework into national policy, while many U.S. states and universities have adopted affirmative consent standards. From a practical standpoint, the Fry's model also empowers individuals to communicate more openly about their boundaries, expectations, and desires. This not only prevents harm but also enriches relationships by fostering trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Ultimately, viewing consent as both a legal requirement and an ethical practice ensures that human dignity remains at the center of intimate interactions. SOGIE, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, provides a nuanced and inclusive vocabulary for understanding human identity beyond the traditional male-female binary. It recognizes that sexual orientation, who one is attracted to, gender identity, one's deeply felt sense of being male, female, both, or neither, and gender expression, how one outwardly presents gender through behavior, clothing, or mannerisms, are distinct yet interconnected dimensions of the self. This framework is especially important in the Philippines, where cultural norms and religious influences have historically shaped rigid understandings of gender and sexuality. By naming and articulating these dimensions, SOGIE allows individuals to assert their identities with clarity and empowers society to acknowledge diverse lived experiences. The SOGIE Equality Bill, which has been the subject of national debate for more than 2 decades, seeks to institutionalize protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Its intent is not to create special rights, as critics often argue, but to ensure that existing rights, such as access to education, employment, housing, healthcare, and public services, are applied equally to LGBTQIA persons. In a society where many experience workplace dismissal, school bullying, denial of services, or even violence simply because of who they are, the passage of this bill represents both a legal and moral imperative. This push for equality aligns with existing legal safeguards in the Philippines, such as RA 7877, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995, which addresses power-based harassment in professional and educational settings, and RA 11313, the Safe Spaces Act of 2019, which extends protection against gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online platforms, and workplaces. Together, these laws signal a broader societal commitment to building environments, whether schools, offices, digital spaces, or communities, where individuals can live authentically without fear of violence, harassment, or discrimination. The struggle for legal equality also carries symbolic and cultural significance. Beyond its practical effects, passing such legislation affirms that society values human dignity over prejudice, empathy over exclusion, and justice over silence. It sends a message to marginalized communities that their identities are not only tolerated but respected and protected. Moreover, it challenges entrenched biases and promotes a culture where diversity is celebrated as a strength rather than viewed as a threat. In this way, the legal fight becomes part of a larger cultural transformation, one where laws not only regulate but also educate, shaping future generations toward inclusivity and equality. Comprehensive sex education, CSE, is not about encouraging sexual activity, it is about empowering individuals with accurate knowledge, practical skills, and values that enable them to make informed and responsible decisions about their health, relationships, and well-being. UNESCO defines CSE as rights-based, inclusive, and evidence-driven, emphasizing its role not only in preventing risks but also in promoting positive sexual health and respectful relationships. Unlike traditional approaches that often reduce sexuality to a set of dangers to be avoided, CSE provides a holistic framework that integrates biological, emotional, social, and ethical dimensions of human sexuality. Evidence-based benefits of CSE include delaying sexual initiation. Young people who undergo CSE are less likely to engage in early sexual activity, giving them more time to develop emotionally and psychologically before making intimate decisions. Increasing contraceptive use. By learning about various contraceptive methods, including both modern and traditional options, learners become better equipped to prevent unintended pregnancies, reducing STI/HIV infection rates. Knowledge of transmission, prevention, and testing reduces stigma and misinformation, empowering individuals to protect themselves and their partners. Promoting gender equality and respect. CSE challenges harmful gender norms, fosters respect for diversity, including SOGIE perspectives, and emphasizes consent, boundaries, and mutual respect in relationships. By contrast, abstinence-only education has consistently failed to deliver on its promises. Research shows it does not delay sexual activity nor reduce rates of teen pregnancy or sexually transmitted infections. In many cases, it exacerbates risks by denying students access to vital information and by reinforcing harmful gender stereotypes, for example, framing women as gatekeepers of morality and men as naturally aggressive in their sexuality. Moreover, CSE addresses realities that young people face daily: exposure to online content, peer pressure, gender-based violence, and questions about identity and relationships. By integrating discussions on digital citizenship, consent, body autonomy, and healthy communication, CSE equips learners to navigate these challenges responsibly. In this sense, CSE is not merely a health intervention, it is also a human rights and social justice initiative that affirms dignity, reduces inequality, and fosters safer, more respectful communities. modern contraceptive technology represents one of the most transformative advancements in public health, granting individuals, especially women, greater autonomy over their reproductive choices. These technologies range from long-acting reversible contraceptives, LARCs, such as intrauterine devices, IUDs, and implants, to shorter-term hormonal methods like pills, patches, and injectables, as well as barrier methods such as condoms that not only prevent pregnancy but also reduce the transmission of sexually transmitted infections, STIs. The integration of these technologies into healthcare systems has been shown to dramatically reduce rates of maternal mortality, unsafe abortions, and unintended pregnancies, while simultaneously contributing to broader gender equality by allowing individuals to pursue education, careers, and personal goals without the constant risk of unplanned childbearing. In the Philippine context, the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health (RH) Law or RA 10354 of 2012 institutionalized the right to access modern contraceptives as part of universal health care. This legislation was a landmark achievement, yet it did not come without resistance. Deep-seated cultural and religious debates, particularly from conservative and faith-based groups, continue to challenge the implementation of reproductive health services. These debates often frame contraception in moral terms, overlooking the evidence-based reality that access to contraceptive technology is central to safeguarding the health, dignity, and agency of individuals, especially marginalized women who bear the brunt of inadequate reproductive health services. By contrast, abstinence-only programs, which emphasize delaying sexual activity until marriage while withholding comprehensive information about contraception and sexual health, have been consistently debunked by decades of global research. Studies from the United States, for instance, reveal that abstinence-only approaches fail to delay sexual initiation and are correlated with higher rates of unintended pregnancies and STIs, as young people remain uninformed or misinformed about effective contraceptive methods. Moreover, such programs often perpetuate stigma around sexuality, shame individuals for natural sexual development, and deny them the tools necessary for informed, responsible decision-making. A holistic and honest approach to sexual health education and contraceptive access is therefore not only a matter of scientific accuracy but also of ethical responsibility. Public health frameworks must be rooted in truth, inclusivity, and empowerment, rather than fear or moral policing. To deny individuals the right to accurate information and effective technologies is to perpetuate cycles of poverty, gender inequality, and preventable disease. Contraceptive technology, when paired with comprehensive sexuality education, represents not merely a medical intervention but a social justice imperative, one that affirms human rights, health equity, and the ability of all people to live full and self-determined lives. 7. Legal recourse and support systems. A strong and evolving legal framework exists in the Philippines to protect individuals from sexual violence, exploitation, and harassment. These laws not only criminalize acts of abuse but also expand traditional understandings of sexual violence, providing broader protections across different contexts. Republic Act 8353, Anti-Rape Law of 1997. This landmark legislation redefined rape as a crime against persons, rather than merely against chastity, reflecting a shift towards recognizing bodily autonomy and human dignity. Crucially, it also recognized marital rape, affirming that consent cannot be presumed within marriage and that spouses have equal rights over their bodies. Republic Act 7610, Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act of 1992. This law offers heightened safeguards for children, imposing heavier penalties on offenders who commit acts of sexual abuse, trafficking, or exploitation against minors. It acknowledges the particular vulnerability of children and prioritizes their best interests in legal proceedings. Republic Act 7877, Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995, considered the first comprehensive law of its kind in the Philippines. It criminalizes sexual harassment in workplaces, educational institutions, and training environments, recognizing that Abuse can occur in hierarchical relationships where power is often misused. It places accountability not only on the perpetrator but also on institutions to establish mechanisms for reporting and preventing harassment. Republic Act 9262, Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004. This law addresses domestic violence in all its forms, including physical, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse. It acknowledges the systemic vulnerabilities of women and children within intimate and family relationships, mandating protective orders and services for survivors. Republic Act 11313, Safe Spaces Act of 2019, also known as the Val-Bastos Law. This statute expands the scope of protection against sexual harassment, addressing it not only in the workplace and educational institutions but also in public spaces and online environments. It explicitly prohibits catcalling, unwanted advances, misogynistic remarks, and online harassment, recognizing that violence and harassment take many forms beyond physical acts. These laws work together to create a multi-layered system of protection, covering domestic, institutional, public, and digital spaces. Beyond the statutes, support systems exist at the community level to ensure accessibility of justice and care. Helplines, women and child protection desks in police stations, and barangay-level units like the Barangay Violence Against Women (BAW) desk provide immediate recourse to survivors. Hotlines operated by government agencies, such as the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the Philippine Commission on Women, and NGOs offer counseling, legal assistance, and shelter referrals. Awareness of these laws and mechanisms is not merely academic, it is a vital aspect of self-empowerment. Knowing one's rights, where to seek help, and how to assert legal protections equips individuals to resist abuse, advocate for themselves, and contribute to a broader culture of accountability and respect for human dignity. 8. Conclusion. This comprehensive examination of the sexual self reveals it as a synthesis of biology, psychology, and society. From the chromosomal level to the cultural level, sexuality is never one-dimensional. By integrating neuroendocrinology, developmental psychology, jurisprudence, and human rights, we cultivate a holistic understanding of what it means to be sexual beings. In the end, the goal of studying the sexual self is not only intellectual, it is ethical. It calls us to foster self-awareness, empathy, and responsibility, empowering individuals to navigate love, desire, and intimacy with dignity and respect for others.